Check. Um, Looks like he's here already, so get ready to talk to Sam, guys. Come on up here.
What a wonderful film that was. I just another run for well. Last year, actually released last year. So the information I'm going to read to you right now, what just came out. And then I talked about how Major League Baseball brought in statistics into the major leagues. And so with Major League Baseball officially incorporating Negro League statistics into the record books on May 29th, Josh Gibson, who we learned about in this movie, is now recognized as MLB's all-time batting champion with a 372 career mark. Just to end the icon, we have by making stuff available in the back. When you leave, we're offering a 10% discount. Thank you so much again for us.
All right, so I think we've got everything set up. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sam Pollard. So first of all, let's just do a check 1, 2. Sam, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Excellent, excellent. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today. As you can see, it is a full house, and I think everyone is very excited for the fact that you're here today, joining us in this conversation. So ladies and gentlemen, please, let's give him one more round of applause. Just for showing up at the big screen. Sam, first of all, what an amazing film. There's so much to unpack as we sit here and ponder the journey that you've taken us on. But please share with us a little bit about the process, because an hour and 45-minute documentary is not an easy feat. Talk to us a little bit about your process of building this story.
Well, about 7 years ago, Byron Motley, who's an executive producer on the project, came to me with wanting to do this film, which started off about his dad, Bob Motley, who was a Negro League umpire. And, trying to make a documentary is a difficult journey. And we went out and pitched it and got rejects and rejections and rejections. And then around 3.5, 4 years ago, we had approached his company, Radical, that you see in the credits. And they gave the proposal to Questlove. And Questlove read the proposal and he liked it, and he has a deal with Radical. And he wanted to sign on as executive producer. And I think with Questlove coming on as executive producer, that's what really made it happen. That's what sort of got the ball rolling and got it financed. So we started pre-production, I'm going to say, Lamar, about 2.5 years ago. And then we brought in a story producer to start building out the story arc. Then we started bringing in people to think about who we want to interview, historians. Byron had all this great old footage that he had shot of former Negro League players that we were going to use. And we started production, I'm going to say, 1.5 years ago, a little over 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago, actual production. And it took that long. I mean, it took a long time to raise the money. And then it took production and post-production. And it was released, I think, last year. Last year around this time in 2023.
And what a fabulous release it is, because, I mean, when you think about the Negro Leagues and the players that were involved, and you get to hear these stories, talk to me a little bit about actually interfacing with some of these players. Some of that footage, was just mind-blowing to me, that you were actually talking to some of these players. What was that like?
Well, I got to say that a lot of that footage of those interviews with people like Buck O'Neill and even the young Willie Mays, those were done by Byron. Those were done by Byron like 12 years ago, a long time ago. Yeah. I basically interviewed the historians who talk about the history and the evolution of the Negro Leagues, people like Rube Foster and Effa Manley. and Gus Greenlee and Cumberland Posey. So Byron, since he was so connected to his dad, and dad had sort of lived that history, he was really passionate about making this happen. And I had known about the Negro Leagues growing up, but I didn't know it to the extent that I found out in doing the research and shooting and interviewing the people for this film. So, it was a really exciting and wonderful process for me to be involved in telling this story that people didn't know about. And you can see all the recognition the Negro League ball players are getting now in this country. It's amazing. The fact that their statistics are going to be the equivalent to the major league statistics was a great, great get. So, it's been a great ride to work on this film.
And it's fantastic to see that the major leagues have instituted a program called the Nine, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And our sponsors here, the Somerset Patriots, have gone through great lengths to honor the Black Yankees and to make sure that the memory of the Negro Leagues comes full circle and that it's celebrated today. Just a side note, we're from Plainfield. This is Plainfield, New Jersey, home of Parliament Funkadelic and George Clinton, home of Milt Campbell, the greatest decathlete of all time. And it is also the home and birthplace of the great Joe Black, who you can see on my shirt right now.
That's great.
Negro League players. So we are just really ecstatic and over the moon about what this documentary means, not only for the recognition of the Negro League ball players, but also we have a little bit of a personal stake at it, in our hometown. Talk to me a little bit about that transition from the segregated ball teams to that integrated ball team and how it really impacted the Black community.
Well, when I was a young man, as a lot of you people in the audience might know, when Major League Baseball brought in Jackie Robinson in 1947, I remember thinking that was a great thing for Major League Baseball. Now, an African American was going to be able to play on a major league team like the Brooklyn Dodgers. And then we saw, the Willie Mazes, the Ernie Banks, the Hank Aaron's, all these players who have been in the Negro Leagues also got a chance to play Major League Baseball. But I didn't know back then the impact it was going to have on the Negro Leagues, economically and socially, and culturally. The fact that when people like Jackie Robinson and Larry Doby and Don Newcomb, when they left the Negro Leagues and went to the major leagues, it left an economic hole for these Negro League teams. And as you see in the film, by the 50s, the Negro League teams are really suffering and they weren't able to survive because now the fans, they weren't going to go to Negro League games if they could see Larry Doby, if they could see, Ernie Banks, or they could see Hank Aaron or Willie Mays or Jackie Robinson. They were going to go to a Major League stadium, be it in Chicago, be it in Brooklyn, be it in San Francisco. They were going to see Major League Baseball. So the Major League teams really lost out, and by 1960, as we say in the film, they were gone. It's this complicated thing about American history. We lived through the horrors of Jim Crow and segregation, and we're fighting in the 50s for in the 30s, 40s, and 50s for our rights through civil rights with Dr. King and others. And the Civil Rights Act in 64, the Voting Rights Act in 65, we're getting a place at the table. But when Black people, people who were doctors and lawyers and business people who left the Black community suffered, just like the Negro League suffered. So it's sort of a catch-22. We wanted equality, but then you got to ask yourself, at what price?
And now that this story has been told, what are your hopes for the impact moving forward? Because as we said, there was sort of a catch-22 regarding, going from segregation to integration. But now the acknowledgement of this information and these players and the greatness that they contributed, what's your hope moving forward for a young generation of people and even for an older generation that, have been impacted by this?
the major hope, Lamar, is to have events like you're doing today, where people can learn about the history. I always think that as a documentary filmmaker, who's been involved in lots of documentaries about the African American experience, it's always important that these films have a life, that people can understand America was just not what I learned when I was growing up initially, that it was about Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. And when I turned on my television, all I saw were basically white people. If I saw black people, it was either as Willie Best or Stephen Fetchit, or Hattie McDaniels. You want to see that, the notion of American history is richer and more complicated. And our stories, the African American experience, is American history. And we should not, run away from that. And people should embrace that. Sure, the Negro Leagues didn't survive, but the legacy of it survived. The players who left the Negro Leagues, went to the major leagues, they survived. They flourished. And so it's important for young people, middle-aged people, old people, to understand history. It's always important to understand history, no matter if it's 50 years old or 100 years old, because it gives you a way to sort of think about how do you live in the world. And I always believe that. I still believe that. So every time I watch a documentary, I learn something. I just watched a rough cut today about Nelson Mandela and his relationship with his grandchildren. And as much as I thought I knew about Nelson Mandela, I still learned something. So that's the importance of a film like The League. It gives an opportunity for people to learn. And that's why, when you make these films, you just don't want them to be, streamed on Hulu or Netflix. You want them to be in community organizations like yours. You want them to play in schools. You want them to play every place so people learn history.
And we are forever grateful for you allowing this film to be shown in this kind of forum. What we've tried to do here is create a space throughout our time period of producing these free film screenings, a place that people can elevate their minds, open themselves up to new information and ideas, whether it was a painful past or a hopeful future. We try to present those angles for the community. You spoke a little bit about just the documentary journey, right? And did you start making film as a documentarian? I know you're an editor, and that's really where you got your teeth in the game to become a director. So is documentary your real passion in filmmaking, or is it more of the commercial narrative stuff that you've done? And I won't talk about his bio. You guys can look all of that up, but the man has an amazing bio.
Well, I've been in the business for over 40 years. And like a lot of people, when I initially got into the business, folks, I wanted to be an editor to edit feature films, dramatic films. I grew up watching mostly dramatic films. I watched those old Hollywood films, people like Burt Lancaster and Ava Gardner and Kirk Douglas. So I wanted to work on Hollywood feature films. And the first film I did work on as an apprentice editor was a dramatic film directed by a Black director. But the editor on that film, a Jewish gentleman named Victor Konevsky, he hired me after that to be his assistant editor. And he basically, brainwashed me to fall in love with documentaries. So from that point on, from the early beginnings of my career, I'm completely compassionate about documentaries. Now, from as you said, from my bio, people might know, I have edited a lot of feature films, but I still am absolutely enthralled and passionate about documentaries.
And some of those feature films include some of the greatest feature films of our time with filmmakers Spike Lee. But you've also done some amazing documentaries, like the documentaries about New Orleans and the levees. You did the movie about the Black girls. You all folks can look all of this up, and then you can realize that we have just talked to an amazing human being, not just a great filmmaker, but an amazing human being who has decided he is going to use his talents to uplift our entire society. So I'm going to conclude our conversation by just giving you the floor with any final thoughts. Anything that you want to just add to this, please, Sam, please just give us any tidbit that you can.
Well, I just appreciate the fact, Lamar, that you invited me to speak at this forum. And I'm glad that you are doing exactly what I think a film needs to be done, needs to happen. That the film lives beyond the television, beyond the premiere at a festival, that you bring it into communities and people get a chance to see it and learn this history. I think this is what you're doing to me is phenomenal and very, very, very important.
I'm extremely humbled, sir. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Sam Pollard, the following nominated director, filmmaker, and now a friend of the Green City Film Festival. Sam, thank you so much.
My
I'll be in
pleasure.
touch. And hopefully we can get you here for the festival in October, my friend. Take care, enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll
You
talk
too.
soon.
Be good. Take care, folks. Bye.
Right on.